After 15 decisive deals and a trilogy that rewrote Canada's relationship with the US, we're turning north to the Arctic. Canada's next move isn't just about money or trade, it's about territory, control, and changing the map itself. This isn't theory, it's already shifting global shipping patterns, climate policy, and the balance of military power. Canada's government is putting billions into Arctic defense and infrastructure, from radar systems to new naval facilities. The world is watching as Canada draws a hard line above the 60th parallel. The question now is, how far will Canada go to enforce its claim? Canada's Arctic sovereignty play isn't just about making claims on a map, it's about building physical proof. The Northwest Passage is at the heart of this strategy. To Canada, these are internal waters. To the US, they're international. That legal standoff isn't going away. But Ottawa's approach is to back up its words with infrastructure, even if the execution is messy. Take the Nanisivik Naval Facility. Announced in 2007, it was supposed to be a game changer for Arctic presence. The original plan called for a $100 million investment, but costs ballooned to $258 million before the project was scaled back. The airstrip and a jet-capable runway were scrapped from the final design. Now, after more than a decade of delays, the facility is projected for full Navy use in 2025. It's not some bustling base, it's a refueling station with two unheated 3.75 million-liter tanks, only usable for about 4 weeks each year when temperatures allow. Critics say Nanisivik is more symbolic than practical. Some experts, like retired Colonel Pierre LeBlanc, argued that Resolute Bay would have been a stronger choice, with its established community and airport right on the Northwest Passage. Instead, Ottawa picked Nanisivik near Admiralty Inlet's eastern corridor to plant a flag and claim a presence. The US still sends ships through without requesting permission. Canada objects, but the dispute drags on. The Nanisivik facility, even with its limited operating window, stands as a visible assertion of sovereignty. It's not about efficiency, comfort, or even year-round control. It's about having something real to point to when the next diplomatic argument breaks out. Construction in the Arctic is slow, expensive, and complicated by weather. But Ottawa keeps spending, not because it expects Nanisivik to dominate the North, but because each piece of infrastructure strengthens Canada's legal and political case. It's not the final word, but it's a start. And as the world's eyes turn north, Canada's next move is bigger, more expensive, and a lot harder to ignore. The real test of Canada's Arctic resolve sits in dry dock right now. The CCGS Arpatuuq is not just another ship, it's the centerpiece of Canada's icebreaker strategy. At 158 meters and 26,000 tons, this vessel is the biggest and most expensive in Canadian history. The contract to build the Arpatuuq landed at Seaspan Vancouver shipyards in March 2025 for $3 billion, with a second ship in the pipeline that pushes the total to about $7 billion. The Arpatuuq is scheduled to enter service in 2030, after years of delays and cost overruns. This is not a showpiece. It's a direct answer to thinning ice, rising traffic, and growing international pressure. The Arpatuuq is built for the toughest conditions. It's rated as Polar Class 2, which means it can slice through 2.5 meters of solid ice, with 30 centimeters of snow at more than 3 knots. Only Russia's nuclear icebreakers hold a higher rating. The ship's diesel-electric plant generates about 47 megawatts, channeled through 2 ABB Azipod thrusters that can rotate 360 degrees. That makes the Arpatuuq the most powerful diesel-electric icebreaker in the world, third overall behind Russia's nuclear fleet. The Canadian Coast Guard runs 123 vessels, but only one current heavy icebreaker, the Louis S. Saint Laurent. That ship can manage 1.2 meters of ice on a good day, and it's more than 50 years old. The Arpatuuq doubles that capability. It can carry a core crew of 60, room for 40 more, and supports 2 helicopters. There's a moon pool for science and underwater operations, plus advanced labs. The vessel is designed for long missions, months at sea without support, able to reach any corner of Canada's Arctic coastline. The ship's story isn't just about engineering. The original plan, announced in 2008, budgeted $720 million for a new polar icebreaker. By 2013, costs had nearly doubled. Now, a single ship costs more than 4 times the original estimate. Every delay and budget jump signals how hard it is for Canada to match its ambitions with real assets. Arpatuuq's name, adopted in 2024, means stormy waters in Inuktitut. That fits. Canada is facing pressure from Russia, China, and the US to defend its Arctic turf. The Arpatuuq is the tool for that job. It's not just about cutting ice. It's about showing up when it counts. But a ship sitting in port doesn't send a message. Canada needs to put its new hardware to work, and that means real drills, real patrols, and real presence north of 60. Military drills in the Arctic aren't just about practice. They're about showing who's in charge as the landscape changes. Operation NANOOK 2024 ran with 2 main components. NANOOK Tugalik, a maritime exercise from August 12 to 22, and NANOOK Nunukput, a land and maritime operation from August 15 to September 15. Canada brought together the Royal Canadian Navy's Arctic and offshore patrol vessels, HMCS Harry DeWolf and HMCS Margaret Brooke, the Canadian Coast Guard, RCMP, Royal Canadian Air Force, Canadian Special Operations Forces, and the 1 Canadian Ranger Patrol Group. They worked alongside the US Navy and Coast Guard, French Navy, and Royal Danish Navy. Canada set the agenda and invited the Allies. That's not just collaboration, it's a statement. The drills covered underwater search, survival in freezing conditions, and boarding operations. The message is clear. Canada wants to prove it can control its Arctic territory, but it's also willing to work with partners. Ice is melting faster than the models projected. New shipping lanes keep opening, and the number of ships using the Northwest Passage is rising. In 2013, only a dozen ships made the trip. Last year, it was over 70. That's a big jump, and it means more eyes on the region from Russia, China, and the US-Canada's defense spending sits at about 1.3% of GDP, which is near the bottom among NATO members. But since 2022, Ottawa announced a 38% boost in northern defense spending, with $420 million for Arctic radar upgrades and new northern hubs. There's a $6.9 billion deal with Australia for over-the-horizon radar, expected operational in 2029, to help spot ships and aircraft before they reach Canadian airspace. The upgrades matter because the Arctic is the shortest route for anything moving between Russia and North America. Shorter warning times mean less room for error, but drills like NANOOK are only part of the picture. Russia runs its own annual UMKA exercises, nuclear submarines surfacing through the ice, bomber flights, live missile tests. Russia has 40 icebreakers. China is building its 3rd, and Canada will have 8 by 2030. The scale isn't close. Canada's exercises focus on working with allies and leveraging local knowledge, especially through the Canadian Rangers, who are mostly Inuit and know the land better than anyone. They're the ones tracking mock emergencies across hundreds of kilometers of tundra. That's the real edge if Ottawa uses it. Political leaders are paying attention. Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre both traveled to Iqaluit to promise more Arctic investment. Carney with talk of unprecedented spending, Poilievre echoing the same. There's consensus on the need, but not on the money. The 2025 budget sets aside $560 million for Arctic sensors and listening posts. That's useful, but it won't stop a foreign vessel from ignoring Canadian claims. The real significance of these drills and investments isn't isolated. They're tied into a bigger strategy that reaches far beyond the Arctic Circle. Canada's latest Arctic moves tie directly to the real world. Nanisivik's symbolic naval facility, finally opening in 2025, but only useful for about 4 weeks each year. The Arpatuuq icebreaker, Polar Class 2, with steel finally cut, and a $8.5 billion price tag for 2 ships, aiming for service in 2030. and Operation NANOOK's 2224 multinational drills with the US, France, and Denmark. These aren't isolated projects. They're Canada's way of locking down the North before anyone else does. Natan Obed said it, "We are completely exposed in the North." So, which of these Arctic power plays do you think reshapes Canada's global standing most? Planting a flag with Nanisivik, smashing ice with Arpatuuq, or flexing muscle in NANOOK? Tell me in the comments.